An ancient artifact has been interpreted, deciphered, and decoded. The artifact contains multi-layered messages of a metaphysical, spiritual, and technical nature. This artifact of great antiquity reads like a book in stone, a book that can be equated to a technical or engineering manual in stone. Having interpreted, deciphered, and decoded this particular artifact, I am curious as to whether or not certain individuals can bring unique perspective to this endeavor and contribute to a broader discussion. In Part 5, Subpart 2 of this video series, we will continue to build upon concepts that we learned in Part 5, Subpart 1, and as we apply the principles of division within the field, we will create an additional data table of information which will broaden our understanding of divine creation from a numerological perspective. To learn more about concepts related to divine numerology and the division of the fields, watch Part 5, Subpart 2 of Ancient Messages in Stone, Decoding the Assyrian Tree of Life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Part 5 of Ancient Messages in Stone, Decoding the Assyrian Tree of Life. In Part 5, Subpart 2 of this presentation, we will resume our study of the circular plane of scale, its application to the tree of life within the field, and expand upon concepts previously applied in Part 5, Subpart 1 of this video series. If you will recall, the circular plane of scale is defined as a construct whose plane occupies the circular measure of breadth, expanse, or scope within a specified or designated area of the field, and whose scale or scales of timing and measure encompass and encircle the vertical degrees of division and dimension within its sphere. The circular plane of scale is defined as a construct whose plane occupies the circular measure of breadth, expanse, or scope within a specified or designated area of the field, and whose scale or scales of timing and measure encompass and encircle the vertical degrees of division and dimension within its sphere. The compounded application of component architecture related to the construction and build-out of the circular plane of scale and its spherical circumference of boundary was accomplished in Part 5, Subpart 1, and ultimately resulted in what is known as the orbital plane or the orbital framework for the wheel of life. Here in Part 5, Subpart 2, we will be working with the circular plane of scale and applying those concepts related to dividing the field of the sphere. In Part 4 of this video series, it was from a macro perspective that we divided the field of the plane into 4 major areas or groups of scale. Similarly, we will approach the field once again from a macro perspective and divide the field of the sphere into 4 major areas or groups of scale. Configurations related to the vertical plane of scale, the mundane cross, the divine cross, and the compass that are a part of the orbital framework have been removed to better demonstrate the act of division. Let us now move forward and proceed with dividing the field of the sphere. We'll begin by dividing the right portion of the circular plane and define it as the eastern hemisphere and the right hemisphere. We can divide the left portion of the circular plane and define it as the western hemisphere and the left hemisphere. We can divide the upper portion of the circular plane and define it as the northern hemisphere. And finally, we can divide the lower portion of the circular plane and define it as the southern hemisphere. Having divided the field of the sphere, the resultant series of interlocking frames is defined as the divine framework of field division for the sphere. Similar to the divine framework of field division for the plane, this series of interlocking frames is defined by either the color red or the color blue. The color red that is associated with the left, western, and southern hemispheres of division represents a negative charge of polarity. The color blue that is associated with the right, eastern, and northern hemispheres of division represents a positive charge of polarity. Let us now move forward and proceed with the micro and minor divisions of the sphere within the field. From a macro perspective, we have divided the field of the sphere into 4 major areas or groups of scale. We will now need to divide the field of the sphere from the micro and minor perspective. To better demonstrate the act of division within the circular plane, we will remove the orbital frames of scale that have been hedged around its spherical circumference of boundary. In the micro division of the field, we'll want to divide the field of the sphere into equal sections. To accomplish this, the act of division will occur along the north and south axis, as well as the east and west axis. In so doing, the act of microdivision results in 4 equal sections, or 4 minor areas or groups of scale. Similar to the way in which we defined each individual housing within the field of the plane, we will now define each section within the field of the sphere by assigning or attributing a number to it. So, beginning in the northeast corner of the field, we'll proceed to scale the circular plane and sequentially assign a number to each section, beginning with the number 1, like so, until we reach the last section. Each minor section or group of scale, as it has been defined within the field of the sphere, is referred to as a quadrant. The term quadrant in this instance is defined as an arc of 90 degrees that is 1/4 of a circle, each of 4 quarters of a circle. Any of the 4 parts into which a plane is divided by rectangular coordinate axes lying in that plane. Any of the 4 quarters into which something is divided by 2 real or imaginary lines that intersect each other at right angles. The quadrant number simply denotes the sequential numbering of each quadrant as they are configured within the spherical circumference of their order and division. In the orbital plane of division, the northeast quadrant is referred to as quadrant number 1. The southeast quadrant, is referred to as quadrant number 2. The southwest quadrant is referred to as quadrant number 3. And finally, the northwest quadrant is referred to as quadrant number 4. If you will recall, we previously removed the orbital frames that hedge the circumference of the spherical plane in order to better demonstrate the active division within the field. We will now repopulate the sphere with the orbital frames at this time for the purpose of context. Notice that each quadrant contains 3 orbital frames. Once again, we can scale the orbital plane. In so doing, we will count the number of orbital spheres contained within each quadrant. Beginning with quadrant number 1, we can see that there are a total of 3 orbital spheres that are linked to the numbers 1, 2, and 3. Moving on to quadrant number 2, there are a total of 3 orbital spheres that are linked to the numbers 4, 5, and 6. Likewise, for quadrant number 3, there are a total of 3 orbital spheres that are linked to the numbers 7, 8, and 9. And finally, for quadrant number 4, there are a total of 3 orbital spheres that are linked to the numbers 10, 11, and 12. Now that we have determined the total number of quadrants within the field of the sphere, as well as the total number of spheres contained within each quadrant, we can now combine them to arrive at the number of their station. For example, we can begin with the number 1 for the first quadrant and combine it with the 3 spheres that are linked to the numbers 1, 2, and 3 contained within its quadrant and arrive at the number 13, which defines its station number. We can accomplish this for each quadrant within the field of the sphere. When we combine quadrant number 2 with the 3 spheres that are linked to the numbers 4, 5, and 6 contained within its quadrant, we arrive at the number 23 as its station number. When we combine quadrant number 3 with the 3 spheres that are linked to the numbers 7, 8, and 9 contained within its quadrant, we arrive at number 33 as its station number. And finally, when we combine quadrant number 4 with the 3 spheres that are linked to the numbers 10, 11, and 12 contained within its quadrant, we arrive at number 43 as its station number. Now that we have determined the station number for each quadrant, we will now apply the divine principles of numerology to each station number. Previously, we combined each quadrant number and the number of spheres contained within each quadrant in order to arrive at the station number. By adding the numbers of each station together, or by adding the number of the quadrant plus the number of its spheres and reducing it to its lowest number, we can arrive at the number of the scale for each quadrant or station. Beginning with quadrant number 1, station number 13, we can add the numbers 1 plus 3 together and arrive at the number 4, or scale number 4. Scaling to quadrant number 2, station number 23, we can add the numbers 2 plus 3 together and arrive at the number 5, or scale number 5. Scaling to quadrant number 3, station number 33, we can add the numbers 3 plus 3 together and arrive at the number 6, or scale number 6. Scaling to quadrant number 4, station number 43, we can add the numbers 4 plus 3 together and arrive at the number 7, or scale number 7. Having divided the field of the sphere from a micro and minor perspective, we have created a data table comprised of 4 categories which contain information about each quadrant. Similar to the data table that we created in part 4 that resulted from dividing the field of the plane, it is the information contained within both data tables that will be applied to illustrations presented in part 6 of this video series. Well, that's it for this video. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to be notified when we post new videos. Until next time.